family and friends of sex offenders, what are they like, how do you cope, and what's it like supporting them through life? A couple of my mom's brothers were convicted sex offenders, happened long before I was born, so I don't know many of the details. My mom always denied it and said they were falsely accused, but also would never let us be alone with them. So seems like she didn't believe what she was saying. As a kid, my close friend's dad was a child sex offender. I felt so bad for my friend. They moved a lot and the neighbors inevitably always found out. They'd hand out flyers around the town and ostracize the family. The dad was guilty and deserved it, but my friend suffered because of it. He was always nice to me, but I never got too close, for very obvious reasons. He couldn't hold a job though because of his conviction, who'd hire a child sex offender. So the family was very poor. Made school difficult for her. He eventually ended up back in prison for failing to report where he lives and being too close to schools. I think it messed her up for life. Both my parents are registered sex offenders and have been since I was 8. My mom was out on disability pretty early on, so we had some money. My dad didn't keep a job for a long time, till he found one with a family friend. Like others have said, we were poor and it was weird knowing that about my parents. Technically, we couldn't have friends at our house without the information being disclosed to their parents, so we didn't have many close friends. I didn't have the neighbors who found out because the court placed a protective order for me and my siblings, essentially protecting my mom, who lived with us, from showing up on a registry. But I do remember when those apps first came out and I had a heart attack as my friends looked up where I lived. I was so relieved it didn't show her name. My parents never really got better or regretted what they did, so a lot of my childhood was being told lies and trying to make them feel better for their lives and their choices. I spent a lot of time listening to my mum call herself the victim and had to relearn what consent was and how children can't consent. I also had to deconstruct a lot of lies I was told about their victim, and I saw, very blatantly, how boys, men are not believed when it comes to SAR and how traumatizing that is. I am 100% a believer in people being able to grow from their past mistakes and become better people, but my parents didn't do that. Before I cut contact, I learned they were still participating in behavior that showed they hadn't grown and that they didn't regret what they did. So my siblings and I don't speak to them. I don't wish them ill and I hope they eventually get help. Growing up was weird. I definitely don't think I learned to cope until I was an adult, and even now I have trouble with it. I was told what they did way too young, around the age of 12, and it both made me hyper-aware of the fucked up side of the world, but also made me aware that people are more than one thing. I have a lot of understanding for people because of that, but I also have learned that you don't have to allow people in your life, even if they aren't always bad. It's about boundaries and your own health. My uncle, Dad's brother, is a sex offender and is now in prison for life. He pretty much molested all 8 of his kids. My dad and my uncle were molested when they were younger. A broken bar. My dad broke the cycle and he didn't. I'm not sure it excuses his actions whatsoever, but after like 10 years my dad went and visited, talked for the first time since he found out. My dad coped and still copes with alcohol. He is ostracized from the family. Except his mother, my grandmother. She just adores him and favors him and can't blame him for molesting his own daughter hundreds of times. I know someone whose brother is a sex offender. She has very complicated feelings about him. He was a good brother to her and she still loves him even though she can never forget what he did to someone. So she avoids him. It's hard to reconcile that someone can simultaneously be the brother you idolized and the monster of someone else's nightmares. My brother-in-law, my wife's sister's husband, was assaulting his daughter from age 8 to 14, all while pretending to be a pious Mormon. When it came to light, it initially divided the family. His mother-in-law, my wife's mom, wanted to forgive him. The rest of the family wanted him gone. His wife, my sister-in-law, finally came around and realized he was a monster. She had almost like Stockholm Syndrome from being married to him. He was a manipulative asshole for their entire marriage. Today he is in prison for 6 years, and she divorced him and is rebuilding her life. She's doing pretty good. I do not ever care to see him again. His daughter is a mess, but we all just try and support her even as she screws up big time. Subscribe and thanks for watching.